Good afternoon, and thank you for attending my presentation of my capstone project for completion of my master's in education from Midland University. Just for the camera, can you please state your name and position with North Point?
Terry Danello, administrator.
Alexis Bynum, teacher. Karen Dankowski, teacher.
John Conte, teacher and coach.
Lavion West, coach and teacher.
Jessica Logo, athletic trainer.
Thank you. And the title of my project is Examination of Athletic Programs and Ways of Communication. A little background on myself before we begin. I graduated in 2010 from Midland University with a bachelor's in education, K through 12 physical education to be exact. I played 4 years of baseball. After the completion in my 2010 year, beginning of 2011, I was a graduate assistant with Midland University. I was the sports information director for 2 years, 2.5 years. And from there, I've now moved to Phoenix, Arizona, where I now reside. I'm the athletic director here at North Point Prep in my 3rd year. And so, a little background before we get started today, and now a little more in depth about my teacher action research project. So the title of my project, Examination of Athletic Programs and Ways of Communication. The purpose of this project was to examine communication of the athletic department here at North Point, how the communication was between coaches and the administration, ways to improve the overall communication, and just where can we get better. So 2 research questions I developed at the beginning of my research was, number 1, will improving communication with athletic staff improve the overall athletic program? And number 2, will implementation of a coach's handbook improve athletic programs? Moving on, before I got started in all my research, I did a lot of literature review. I looked at what other people were saying about communication, what other schools were doing, policy and procedure-wise, the ways they communicate with their coaches, and some highlights that I found through the literature review. The first one being from Terry and Peterson. Some organizations never think that having a communication strategy, either they don't see a need to share much information, or they can figure out a different way to communicate however they wish, and it'll still work. The second point in the literature review asked for feedback on the clarity of a message, quality of a message, audience response, and presentation style. This feedback should be given verbal and done informally soon after the presentation. Again, make sure the feedback will be honest and do not take criticism personally. And that really stuck out to me as coaches are always wanting feedback. Whether, hey, can we do something different in our program this way? I have a student that's, continually to do this. What's something I can do? They're all, coaches are needed to be coaching as well, as long as with the students. And the third point coming from Winks, an understanding of the importance of communication is significant to the success of the educational administrator. Both leadership and management require extensive use of communication. And that really stuck out because communication is huge with me. If everyone's trying to do their own thing on their own page, not with one vision, you're going to have things all over the map. And so when I started my research, when I started looking at the review, I looked for communication strategies. What were other people doing to communicate effectively? I also looked into what communication, what made companies successful. What kind of communication were they using to become successful? And then I was also looking at what other schools did. There's a lot of successful schools in Arizona. And so I just looked into, tapped into what they were doing to help what we can improve here. So the next part was, why was this research needed here at North Point? When I got here 3 years ago, I walked in the door and had no idea what I was doing. I was a first-time athletic director, and North Point had gone without an athletic director on campus for a few years. A lot of turnover, a lot of change, nothing really set in place other than the policies that the school had set in place. But some were enforced, right up front at the beginning, some were trying to be enforced on the back end. A lot of turnover in the coaches. so new faces, people having to learn the whole strategy over, the whole program over again. And so that was the first reason I felt research was needed here. Second reason being, ways of communication are always evolving. Just look at the social media world. With 10 years ago, social media wasn't around, and communication was pretty much email, cell phone, face-to-face. Now you have Facebook, you have Twitter, and you have all the other ways of communication that are taking place. And then the third being that I just wanted to look into North Point's programs in a way we were already communicating. How could we make it more effective? How can we make our programs overall more successful? And so the methodology and implementation began, and it began with a 12-question survey. The survey was given to 10 coaches that were returning from my first year to my second year, and covered 3 categories. And then also I conducted interviews with past and present administration, athletic directors, past and present, coaches, and then even opposing school athletic directors and a few coaches. Just to try and dig a little deeper and just see what was out there. Also, research was completed on the best strategies for communication and other methods to improve an athletic program. From there, I received my results. And so looking right away, the blue resembles here the 2014-15 school year, which would be last year, to the red, the blue is the number of coaches departed, with the red being returning. On the left here is 2014-15, on the right is 2015-16. And so that first year of the data that I've taken, from 30 coaches, 20 left. And so we had 10 coaches returning the next year that had 1 year under their belt, 1 or more years under their belt in the system, kind of knew what they were doing. To where we had to fill 20 positions with new people. So the majority were new, and it was a new place, new policies, all that. To this year, going into this year, we lost roughly 10 coaches, with retaining over the majority of, I think, 22 coaches. And so, as you can see more of my data, and we'll cover that, it was kind of slowly shifting already, and people understanding more, what was needed to be done, and what the expectations were. And so, this graph here, coaches felt comfortable with communicating with the administration. Pre-implementation, 40% were comfortable. So 40% of the 30 coaches were comfortable communicating with administration. And that's alarming, just because if you can't have a good line of communication with who's trying to help you improve your programs, then it's going to be a hard time taking the next step forward. Post-implementation, all the way up to 90%. And so then this last graph here shows coaches understood their expectations. Pre-implementation of being 50%, post-implementation being completely 100% understanding. And so those are big, just as, trying to move forward as a program, implementation of these things that I'll share are huge. And so other research results that I found, preseason coaches meetings have never taken place here on campus. And secondly, coaches have never been provided evaluations or feedback from a previous season. Coaches had very little communication with the administration unless there was an issue. Administration would come to you only when the wheels are falling off and there's issues arising either with parents or the students. And then the fourth one being a high turnover rate of coaches made it difficult for an athletic program and all the athletic programs and students to create an identity for their program. And so those are 4 additional things that I found through my research. And moving on, what am I going to do about these? The next steps for action. And so I've done my research. I've looked into other high schools. I've looked into other handbooks. I've looked into effective ways of communication. And now it's pretty much, where do we go from here? And so the first thing, I began with preseason coaches meetings, and those are prior to every season. So fall coaches, winter coaches, spring coaches, that's 3 meetings a year. That way if they're coaching more than one sport, they're getting a refresher every season. Next one, a coach's handbook has been created and coaches receive an orientation during the preseason coaches meeting. The coach's handbook was created by myself using policies and procedures already in place here at North Point, and then also what I picked up at other schools, that I thought would be effective and help us move forward. And so that was created and that is shared during the coaches meetings. The third being a postseason evaluation provided to coaches at the completion of each season. This is a time where a head coach and even assistant coaches can sit down with me and review the whole season in depth. And then we share ideas of where do we go from here? What do we need to get better? What do we want to look for? And then these are some areas we've done great this year. Let's keep going on that track. And so then my conclusions at the end of this, where I've implemented these 3 things, and now we've seen the data where it's reversed, slowly reversing and trending in the right way. And my conclusions: communication is vital to the success of an athletic program. You have to have it. If it's not there, there's going to be a lot of struggles that occur. Next, moving forward, I would like to survey a larger pool of coaches regarding the effective ways of communication. My first survey was a small group, as you saw the turnover rate. Now maybe having 20, 25 coaches back, let's survey that number and see where we're at and what ways we can get better. Third being, conduct more research on effective communication on the workplace and management level. And so I think with communication changing so much, you always have to be a learner and have to keep up with the times and, communication, where is it going, what are the effective ways. And then lastly, conduct more research on athletic programs around the country and what makes them successful. Why are the big Division VI schools that have 3,000 athletes able to be so successful year after year? We're a small school, but why can't we duplicate that? Even though they have 3,000 athletes, why can't we take our 400 athletes and duplicate what they're doing at that level? And so I think those are my next steps, and through my research, keep continuing to build. And so if there's any questions today, I'm willing to answer. Otherwise, any questions? Yes, John.
What's the main purpose of your postseason evaluations? What are you trying to learn from the coach?
What I'm trying to learn from the coach is kind of getting a feel on where they're going with the program. With the high turnover rate, it's almost a crapshoot on, okay, is this coach going to want to come back next year? Is this coach going to be leaving? Have they already checked out? So, they finished the year, and now it's kind of a gauge of, okay, this is what we've done this year, and, these are areas we need to work on moving forward. We would like to do this, but it's also a big gauge on, are you invested into our athletic program? Because if it's a 2-minute postseason meeting and the coach doesn't have much to say, then they're not going to be invested in their program too much, and I may need to start looking for a replacement. Logan.
How would you better communication between yourself and a non-compliant but effective coach?
That's a great question. That's where you kind of got to get to know all your coaches and learn the ways they're best going to receive your message. And so a lot of people, you can give a directive through an email, and it's going to get corrected immediately. Some people need the face-to-face, reminder, and then others are going to need the urgent, get your butt in gear. You need to get this figured out, or we're going to have to start looking elsewhere. And so I think you really need to get to just know your coach, know how they communicate, and that's one of the really challenging parts of my job is having to get to know 30 different coaches, 30 different individuals. Not everyone's going to be able to work the same. Not everyone's going to be able to, receive the message the same way. And so a part of my duty is to see how all the different coaches are communicating and communicate the messages effectively the best way they're gonna receive it. So if that's all, I thank you for attending, and I hope you guys have a great weekend.